Welcome to the Thriver Lifestyle Podcast. I'm your host, Marianne Bacall, embodied leadership coach, holistic wellness consultant, and TEDx speaker. I'm on a mission to empower individuals and organizations to thrive from the inside out. Hello, Fiona. I am so excited to welcome you to the podcast because I've been following your content for a while now across the pond. Is that what they say, right? Like in Europe. And I love that you have created such a beautiful environment there. But before we jump into it, because I'm really excited to just have a conversation with you, I'd love for you to sort of introduce yourself. And I know it's a loaded question because there's just so much, right, to share about ourselves. But, what would you like to share with our Thrivers, with our podcast today about yourself?
Thank you so much, firstly, for having me. It's a real pleasure to come and speak with you. And yes, I'm across the pond. I'm in the UK. I'm in England, in a county called Somerset, which is mostly famous for Glastonbury. So we're about 40 minutes from Glastonbury. And I'm a transformational women's mentor and a wild feminine embodiment facilitator and facilitator trainer. And my passion really is working with women to rehome themselves within the wild, within their bodies, within themselves, with nature, with the seasons and cycles within them, walking with them to find their voice again, to find their howl, to claim pleasure back for themselves, to live in their erotic bodies. And that really is my passion. It is my, the why that gets me up in the morning. It's really what drives me to exist most days, because I just feel, having been through such a journey of disconnect to reconnect, I know the path is full of many ups and downs and twists and turns, but I know that when you arrive back home into your body and back into the wild within yourself, it's like this is where we're supposed to be, and this is where we're supposed to be living. So that's what I do day to day.
Absolutely. And it's your Shakti, your driving force of, all the things that you do. Can you take us back a little bit? You said you're very familiar with the disconnect to reconnect. Can you share with us a bit of your backstory of how all this, because it's not like, when they ask us, so what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be a wild woman facilitator, bringing back women to their erotic nature. That's not something, that we're taught as an option. So how did this unfold for you?
And I love that you say that, because it's, as little kids, we have no idea of the spectrum of what's out there for us as adults. I know that now the world is changing and you can be pretty much anything you want, and it's kind of, the doors are being opened wide at school. But for me, I remember when I was little, I think I must have been, maybe it was like 7 or 8. And the first job I remember wanting to have was to be an Egyptologist. And I got so obsessed with ancient Egypt and made this whole little like folder with like plastic pockets of everything about archaeology and Egyptology. And then, being a fad as a kid, those things move. But I always had this fascination with the female body. And it was around the same age, actually. And I think there must have been, friends in my group a little bit older than me who were starting to develop. They're getting little like boob nubbins, and some were starting their bleeds. And I was like, what is this initiation? Like, why am I not there yet? And I remember hounding my mom, being like, in the bathroom, and she had her packet of tampons, being like, what's that, mommy? Like, what's that? She's like, just wait a few years and I'll tell you. I was so impatient. And she took me on dog walks, and we would have like 4-hour-long dog walks, and I would just ask her every single question under the sun of like, what's this? What does that mean? What happens when? And I'm so grateful to my mom for being so open. And I think she had to learn also how to teach me those things, because she never received that education from her mom. And so it was really beautiful, I think, for both of us to kind of go through my maturation together, in a sense. And then, adolescence happens, and I went to boarding school because my parents lived abroad at that time. That was really when the start of the disconnect happened. And I don't know if you've ever heard stories about boarding schools, but to me, it was like a patriarchal prison. Like, I hated it. And I developed an eating disorder through just wanting to feel like I had some sense of control over myself. I was doing exams and it was really stressful. And the thing that I knew I could do because I'd watched my mom do it as a child was stop eating, restrict what you're eating, eat, purge. This is how you can control something about your day, something about yourself. And I remember not even wanting to lose weight. That wasn't even the thing, but it was like, how can I control my body? And in that control,
Mm-hmm.
there became the disconnect to the body
Yeah.
because I stopped listening to her, how hungry she was. I stopped listening to the voice in my head that knew that this was a really bad thing to be doing. And so that was kind of a piece of my journey. And thankfully, it was it was really bad for, I would say, about 4 or 5 years. And I was taken out of school for a bit, actually. And it was kind of in a point, I think, where I was about 17 or 18, and I was Googling the kind of earlier days of the internet. And I was like, it's like my higher self knew I need to get the fuck out of what I was doing to myself. And I remember Googling hypnotherapists for eating disorders. And I told my mom, and I was like, Mom, I want to see this woman. And she was like, absolutely, like, we'll get you seen with her. And it was like,
I love that
kind of
support.
thinking that was my like higher self, this wild woman being like, what are you doing to your body? Like, you have to come home. You have to return to this intuitive, instinctual knowing of just how important your body is, like how beautiful she is. So yeah, there's a lot more I can share about that, but I would say that has been like a very foundational piece. And
Mm-hmm.
when I truly met my wild woman, it was probably like a decade after that school incident. That was like when the final door closed on that eating disorder, because it was sprinkled through my 20s. It came out through like addiction to exercise or, restricting some certain, it kind of still lingered a little bit. But it was like as soon as I really integrated my wild woman, it was like, no way am I ever fucking doing anything like that to myself
Mm-hmm.
again. Like the thought of putting my fingers into my mouth now and trying to make myself throw up, I'm like, no way in hell could I do that again.
Yeah, I mean, because you have reconnected and so you can feel it all. And I think we do go through these stories because I had one similar, I had to disconnect from a lot of childhood trauma. So I learned to literally disassociate. And so in order to feel something, I had my own addictions, and my wake up call, because I am stubborn and my body was telling me, my highest self was telling me all these things. It wasn't until I overdosed and had a near death experience that I was like, oh shit. And it's funny you said hypnotherapist because after the near death experience, and this was over a decade ago, I didn't know where to turn, right? Because I didn't know anyone who had gone through anything similar. So I Googled, and a Dolores Cannon QHHT hypnotherapist was actually the first person that came up. And that's what I did. And I'm like, what is this? I had no idea what it was, but that was kind of, my highest self like leading me towards these things and to reconnect, to come back, and feel what all the things that were trapped in our body and, alchemize that. And I
Yeah.
love how you said that when you asked your mom, she was so supportive. And I love that. That just filled me with so much warmth, to have that. And to see that when and you work with women, I do as well, that when we see these mothers who do this work on themselves, how it positively affects their children and their daughters. And, they say when you heal yourselves, you heal 7 generations before you and after you. And I think that's so beautiful to have that support.
Yeah. And I really do believe the generation that we're in is like, we're the chain breakers.
Hmm.
Our parents and obviously generations before them, they didn't have access to the information, the support and the therapy and the techniques and the tools that we do. I work with a lot of moms, younger moms, like, women my age and younger and also older, but so many of them, like, their driving force is because I want to be a role model for my daughter, because I don't want this to pass down through my lineage, because
Yeah.
it ends with me here. And it's also sprinkling in that compassion for, also my mom didn't teach me this, so I'm making sure my child knows this. And
Hmm.
I'm choosing not to have children, so I don't have a daughter to teach this to. But should my brothers have daughters, I'll be teaching them. But I see that we can still teach the collective through the work that you and I are both doing. It doesn't just need to be passed down through the bloodline. It's like, how can we disseminate this information as far and wide? And thanks to the internet, I mean, that's what brought you and I together. And the power of the internet can be both a blessing and a curse, but there's just so much we can so much change. This is what you're stepping into. This is what's available for you on the other side.
Mhm.
And I don't think that we as a culture, as a British culture, see the value in self-development as much as other countries and other cultures. It's like you really have to tease the money out of people's hands to be like, no, this is good for you.
Yeah,
Therapy is good for you.
yeah.
Doing deep, fucking scary transformational work is good for you. But yeah, we're an interesting people. But there's slowly more pockets of us doing it. It's just less prominent than in the States.
Yeah, and I think, like, that's the reason you went back because you are this beacon, right? To show other women, like, what is possible when you do reconnect with your body, you
Yeah.
know? And I see that you teach a lot of women, like, you have in-person workshops, you have the online stuff, you have a lot of retreats. I love Greece, and you had a Greece retreat, and I'm like, "I want to go." I went to your Greece retreat. I still will go to one of your retreats, but I just logistically, with family, with my own stuff going on, but, like, that is, kinda that there in the back of my mind. In these retreats, and you said you have a lot of women coming from all over the world, you know, take us in a little bit because I think some people don't for me, I believe retreats are so transformational. I've had some of my biggest transformations. I really believe you can quantum leap because with the collective energy, you are in this portal, and especially if you work with womb work, yoni work, you're really in a void, a portal, like the transformation that happens. So, what do you see? What are some of the things that you are, privy to witness in these transformations?
Oh my goodness, so many things. And to caveat as well, retreats, and I
Mm.
wholeheartedly agree with you. One of being in my first ever women's retreat, which was slash my yoga teacher training, and sitting in circle for the first time was like literally the pivot moment that made me want to do what I do now. And they are absolutely life changing. And I'm still in touch with people from that first retreat years and years ago. But for so many women, it's even just as simply as being in a group of women for
Mhm.
that amount of time. For a lot of women, that's really scary, or they don't have even 10 or 15 women that they could actually feel comfortable with opening up or sharing, or let alone crying or doing a pleasure practice beside.
Mhm.
The some of the things I've seen can be just so deeply moving, and thinking that sometimes a retreat can be, and I don't level my retreats, but I'm just going to say like maybe on the like more entry level scale, but
Mhm.
I hate to say that because there is no level, but say like so some of the more gentler practices, sometimes those are the ones that create the biggest transformation, because not all transformation has to be so catalytic and so cathartic and so dark and so intense. I mean, obviously that creates a lot of transformation, but oftentimes it's the really subtle, really gentle practices that like
Mhm.
rock the foundations so much more and leave the deepest impact. I've had women saying that they were on a 3-day retreat with me and it was like 7 years of therapy.
Mhm.
Women who have never had an orgasm before in their lives, and we spent a weekend doing pleasure practices, sexual and non-sexual, and they had an orgasm with their boyfriend the first time they made love after the retreat.
Mhm.
Women who healed their relationships with their breasts after giving milk for so many years and then feeling disconnected. There's just so many things can happen that when these women arrive on, say, the Friday and they leave on the Monday, or if it's a week long, they leave a week later and they're like, oh my God, I did not know that much could change in X many days.
Mhm.
And you're right, it is the power of being in a group, that the group energy just creates this huge field of possibility. And it's why I say it's so different to one-to-one work, because the group energy just really adds this different frequency, this depth, this it is
Yeah, I mean,
quantum change. Yeah.
it's like coming together in a coven, It's just like that collective energy, and I think a lot of women also, as you mentioned, sometimes they don't have other people where they feel safe enough, other women that they feel safe enough, it's that sister wound, the witch wound, that maybe their experience with women has been they've tried to open up and they were closed off, and it's just healing to be in circle. and then, when you said about the softer practices, are you ready to thrive, not just survive, in your life, leadership, or career? At Thriver Lifestyle, we believe thriving isn't just about success. It's about alignment, vitality, and creating a lasting impact. For women leaders, our coaching programs are designed for high-achieving, busy women who are ready to reclaim their power. If you're feeling burnt out or disconnected, we guide you to transform stress into flow and burnout into balance. Through somatic practices, breath work, and mindfulness, we empower you to lead with authenticity, confidence, and vitality. For corporations, Thriver Lifestyle helps forward-thinking organizations cultivate thriving workplace cultures. We created customized wellness programs that foster employee well-being, build resilience, and improve morale, unlocking the full potential of your team and company. Whether you're an individual ready to transform or an organization ready to evolve, Thriver Lifestyle is here to help you thrive. Visit thriverlifestyle.com today to learn more and schedule a consultation. Because thriving is more than just a goal, it's a way of life. I think it's so underrated, the tiny things, because it's actually really simple. It's not complicated to start doing this work. It's not always easy, but it can be simple practices. It's just as easy as like breathing into your body and actually feeling your body. I remember when I first started going into this work because I was so disassociated that just actually being still, I mean, that's why I did drugs, alcohol, was because I needed to like numb because I had too many feelings if I actually sat with it. And just like actually sitting for that first time, not doing anything, right? Not doing a pledge, not, but just actually sit was just one of the most cathartic and also create like it's hard to explain just being with my body for that first time.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, that's as gentle. I was just breathing and actually just being fully present, So I think for anyone who was listening, transformation doesn't always, like you said, have to be explosive. I think that's just such a beautiful representation of what it is like to be a woman, the softness, the hardness, the
Yeah.
complexity, the multidimensionality. That's all part of this journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of desire to meet and be with the dark feminine and her aspects, and that a lot of women I think can get kind of, what do I want to say, like seduced by her and think that that's the only way. But actually, as you said, it's what women I think need more of is the softening and is the slowing down and is the surrendering. And it's like,
Yeah.
those are the things that need to be taught more, that there's a natural hunger for the dark and for the wild and for the whore and for the seductress. But it's like slowing down and exploring tenderness. We're like, nah, that seems boring. Let's rush through that. I want to get to the edgy shit. I want to like get to the kinky stuff. And it's like, yeah, but it's the whole, we want to really meet the whole spectrum, and there's a time and a place for both. But I really think women really need to practice being in the deep feeling, like sitting and reassociating with themselves, like re-embodying themselves, and just sitting and breathing, like you said, was so powerful for yourself. Is like, that is like level one, step one, like we begin here.
Mm-hmm.
And that can shift so much, just bringing your presence into your body, into your breath, into like your butt cheeks on the floor, just being like, I am here now.
Yeah. And I love that you said that because for me, the dark feminine and the darkness has always been much easier. I've always loved the dark. When I would disassociate, I would go into like the womb and the darkness. Like that was very comforting for me. I mean, I was over 10 years ago, I was a pro dominatrix. So like the darkness always called to me. And in the last 2 years, really like slowing down and the lighter, softer sensuality part, that actually has been the most difficult, because I like give me the hard, give me I felt like it was just this survival type of like, give me all you got, I can take it kind of mentality, that when I did the softer practices, like I felt like that was just even more impactful. Like truly the one like for anyone listening, just slowing down can change everything.
Yeah.
Like slowing how we talk, slowing how we eat, slowing how we walk. These little simple things have been some of the most transformational things to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like we're resensitizing ourselves to what it means to be alive and to what it means to
Mhm.
be in a body. And that's why I think so many of us are so drawn to the dark. And often it's the shadow dark, not like the true dark, because
Mhm.
we're so desensitized that we're seeking that hit, like that intensity, that ecstasy from being the whore, but it's like in her shadow expression, or being in the wild, but it's like a little bit on the wrong side of the spectrum, versus what it actually takes to meet yourself in the moment and slow down. And so much of that involves vulnerability, and that's what we don't want to sit with. So it's easy to be like, no, 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 just spank me instead. And it's like, well, that's another way of numbing out because you're seeking pain
Yeah.
to feel more. But it's like, okay, but we can actually learn to feel by moving slowly and by going softly, and expanding the whole, resensitizing the whole body, so that when you do dance with the dark, it's even more effervescent and even more potent, because you're going in it with your boundaries. Your boundaries are your skin,
Mhm.
and so like if you're not sensitive to yourself, to your boundaries, to your skin, you're gonna play in that realm without a little piece of your sovereignty, and you might struggle to really keep yourself safe.
Yeah, for me, working with the jade egg and yoni egg, and just even in that stillness and subtleness has had and that's so soft compared to other tools that you can use and other things. I have the crystal dildos, I have all these, the wands, but like that tiny little subtle thing and just like not even moving it, sensing it, like that subtleness, that shift has had like waves of vulnerable release for
Mm.
me. And I think, a lot of women, I love that you're bringing this up because they think like, we talk about the wild and all this that's also part of wildness is to surrender.
Yeah. It's like, the wild woman, I think this is why I always say, when I teach on the wild, it's like, let's talk about everything that wild is not as well. Because I think, you know, undo every image when you think of the wild woman, like delete every Pinterest board of these fucking barefoot women running around in like flowy outfits. I'm like, that's one example of what a wild woman. I'm like, is she really a wild woman, or is it something that just looks good on a Pinterest board? And it's like,
Mhm.
the wild is a feeling, it's not a fucking look. And so it's like, of course the wild will take you into it. The wild woman is just an aspect of the feminine that brings you back into the primal body. So of course a part of that is the softness. She's not on the hunt all the time. She's also
Mhm.
hibernating. She's also sleeping. She's also making love, she's rearing babies, and she knows how to regulate her nervous system because she's an animal. We can't always be fucking and howling and hunting and biting all the time. Like, that's not how animals in the wild are.
Most of
And
the time they're sleeping. And I mean,
yeah,
I look at my cat, she's just basking in the sun and she's napping and she's purring like wow.
yeah,
Yeah, it was such a beautiful example of just being.
yeah.
Yeah, and so, the theme for this season is goddess rebirth, feminine leadership, all that, and you've been doing this work for a while. Like, what have you seen, as the years have gone by and the unfolding and, what have you been able to witness with women, and what do you see happening sort of in the future?
Oh, so many things. Do you know, I find it really hard not to comment on what I see in the field and kind of the changing landscape of feminine leadership. And I'm an advocate for leadership in integrity
Mhm.
and creating businesses in integrity, speaking with integrity, acting with integrity, all of that. And there's a lot of fucking bullshit out there.
Mhm.
of women trying to play the game and calling it feminine leadership. And I just see this like blatant capitalism just like dripping through a lot of expressions of what leadership is. It's
Yeah.
supposed to be new paradigm that just screams old paradigm.
Mhm.
And so I believe just that a huge part of what new paradigm feminine leadership needs to be is like be really fucking discerning with where you get your information, with who you trust, with who you follow, because there's so much out there that is doing the name of the feminine an injustice. So beneath that is like, how do we become more discerning? Listen to your body. Like
Yeah.
when you open an Instagram account and you find somebody, and I'm not fucking here to shit on anyone, and I'm not gonna, bitch about who I'm seeing, but I'm just that there's a theme and it's out there and I'm not the only one talking about it. And it's just like a real call to get really fucking clear with your purpose, with your why, with your values, and to be really in integrity, because people can smell what's off. Like people can fucking like smell shit that stinks. And like being leaders of the new paradigm and being in stewarding feminine leadership, it's really up to us to create and model what that means. And that looks like community over individuality. It looks like being in circle over, it's like bottom up approach versus top down. It's sitting in circle over being at the head of the table. It's soft and surrendered versus linear and directional and, being a dictator. It's heart led, it's pussy led, it's not mind led. And, there's so many nuances to it. And so when you see women out there and people out there who are talking about new paradigm leadership or feminine leadership, it's like really feel into how they are
Yeah.
showing that and embodying that. Because if they're not embodying it, if they're just talking about it, they're not fucking doing it. They're
Yeah.
just talking about it because it's a buzzword.
Yeah, and I think it's like, are they actually also doing the work,
Exactly.
that they preach? And one of the things that I've noticed is, so I before I started doing this coaching, I actually come from a corporate marketing business background. So I was coaching like in business first. And one of the things I see, one, because I'm pretty real on like just in general and my podcast, is that I just saw and I grew up in LA. I lived in Miami for 10 years. I would go to New York. So I've been in the city. It's just like when I grew up in LA and you knew who are the locals versus the ones who just got there and like name dropping and like, yeah, I'm in this Hollywood Hill, like it was just all these things. What I noticed, especially because living there, and I've also lived it in Miami with the yachts and the private jets and all that, is that some I felt were really selling spirituality. And as you said, everyone's on their own journey, they have their own audience, but it's like to be spiritual is to ride a jet or like a yacht. Like that's the ultimate, like what you got to reach for. That means that you have come spiritual attainment. And that always like set wrong with me. Like, look, I love fine dining. I love all the nice things, but like, how are you really feeling inside? Because now that, and I moved out of the city and I still love going to Miami, visiting friends and family in LA, going to New York and like living that. But I felt most at home with like a regulated nervous system with just really the simple things like waking up with my partner, like gardening, doing these things. And I think there needs to be more examples. I think that's why I've been called to share like my normal life, because people think that once you are really like you've reached that level, like these are the check marks, like the designer stuff. And to me, I'm like, no, like that's still a repackaging of what you said, like that capitalistic thing. And it's like, no, what to me, like true wealth is like the fact that I wake up truly with like slowness,
Mm.
like being able to spend an hour in bed petting my cat, you know?
Me too, but with my dog.
Like,
Literally, it's the best.
that's like wealth to me that I don't
Yeah.
have to, like go up and like get the money. And granted, I went through that phase too, where I thought part of, the value that I bring is that I had these markers of wealth. And going deeper into my journey, I realized that like that still felt empty if I didn't continue doing that deeper work. Like I have a different appreciation for it now, but it's not something that I needed to have in order to feel a certain way. And I've actually come across this, like, I don't know, like in the last few years, I used to be very prolific, like super prolific, showing everything on social media, like I had this and that. And now that I'm like so content with life, but I know that part of the market, like you have to show, like, no one's showing like the normal regular things because it's not as like flashy. Like I'm not traveling the world that I used to, staying at the best hotels and all that. But like I just feel so much more at home and, like,
Yeah.
regulated, and, like, that's kind of been, like, how do I even show that? Because putting my camera and, like, me living my nice slow life, like, is that boring for people to watch? Because literally I'm just, like, moving slow, journaling, grounding outside, and, yeah, I don't feel the need to capture it
Yeah.
on video the way that I did years ago with, like, all the things that I was doing, and yet I feel like people need to see that more, that's, like
Yeah.
it's like this I'm like
And I'm
like,
so
it's
with you.
so
Yeah, I'm everything you said it is 100% my experience as well. And I also really like keeping my life private. Like no one has ever seen a photo of my partner. We've been together nearly 8 years. I show my dog on my stories when I remember to, and it's like most of the things I post about are usually about my dog. I love bringing in the archetypes into, especially the erotic archetypes, into marketing and leadership as well. And I really feel that this is where the seductress is pulling us into the mystery. Like the whore or has had her moment of being really exposing and being like, these are my gifts, these are my services. Like, look how amazing I am. Look how like fertile I am. Look how abundant I am.
Mhm,
Come and work with me, or look how amazing my life is. And it's really like her energy is very like outward, very showy. Whereas the seductress is like this lean back, draw in energy. It's like bringing people into the darkness and into the unseen. And I like, to me, the seductress really ripples through my work and the way that I market naturally.
mhm.
And I really invite, people to think about that too in leadership. It's like you don't have to show everything about your life to prove something, exactly what
Yeah.
you said. And,
Mhm,
there are big names and brands and coaches out there who that's their look. That's like, what they stand for. And that's a huge part of their brand and their marketing. I'm like, cool, that's you. You got a huge following and people love that shit. I'm like, cool, I'm not buying into it personally. And I'd actually rather see pictures of somebody out there picking flowers, or somebody at the farmer's market, or somebody just cuddling with their dog. And yeah, I really resonate too, because sometimes I feel like I haven't left the house for 3 days because it's winter time and I'm not doing anything very exciting. So I'm not just going to take my phone on a walk just to prove that I've done something. But
yeah.
I just think, this is really that unraveling of this old paradigm of like getting to lead differently and getting to do business differently and getting to show up and create what wealth means and what
Mhm,
abundance means in a different way. And it's not about proving yourself. It's like, how does it feel to spend the first 3 hours of your morning? And as you said, like my dog runs up to wake me up. My partner brings me a hot lemon. We have cuddles in bed. Then I have a slow shower. And it's like, that is so abundant to me, rather
mhm,
than, jumping out of bed and like going to the gym and then coming and sitting at my desk. And it's like, whoa. But I'm like, I'm not going to put that on Instagram either. So I think so much of what we're saying as well, it's like daring to do it differently is, I
mhm.
think, so much of what needs to happen in the way that people are leading, because everybody's like looking to somebody else. Oh, what are they doing? How are they doing their marketing? What font are they using? What language are they using? And it's like everybody's, not everybody, but there's a lot of disconnect from their creative and erotic wellspring because they're looking to get it right. And this is that good girl programming in us. This is insidious, and it comes out in the way people lead and the way people do business. And it's like, I'm so afraid of failing that I'm going to copy everybody around me, but tweak it slightly so it's a little bit mine, but it smells and sounds the same as everybody else's, because
Mhm,
people are afraid to really put their stake in the ground and be like, this is my way, this is my brand, this is my voice, this is my mission. I don't care if I've got 5 people with me, or if I've got 5,000 people with me, or 50,000 people with me. I'm fucking going anyway.
mhm.
And I think that's like where we can really call in the wild woman, and that's where we can call in the creatrix and the oracle and you know, all these archetypes and allies to give us this connection to our intuition and to trusting in ourselves that we can create a different world and that we are creating a different world. And it's
Mm,
not like our worlds have to be different, but it's like you're creating your thing over there, somebody's creating it over here, I'm creating it over here. And it's like they all look slightly differently, but underneath it's like that same frequency of change. And that's what I want to see is like more women offering work in their way, like listening and following their muse
mhm.
rather than this copy paste.
Yeah, and I think, like, what in the last really the last few years, like, slowing down and doing all that, what's really been coming up for me is to really and my ancestors just come in strong, to go back to, like, ancestral practices, and, I mean, I have a whole, like, sleeve, I've, like, really been just, like, embracing my pre-colonial indigenous roots and, the spiritual practices with that, is really encouraging others because I feel like a lot of spirituality out there right now is just repackaged like to look very appealing to like white women, especially like in America. It doesn't have that like substance like to look like it does look like super perfect. And just a call to women out there to like go back to your roots too. The women from it may not be your mother or your grandmother, but like connect with your land, your homeland, like your roots, and like also own that. It doesn't have to be, when I think about yoga and meditation now, how it's like so packaged versus like what you really see like in India and the roots, it's like so different,
Yeah.
right? They take like one part and it's the one with, you're doing a really difficult pose, in aloe yoga wear, and people think like that is yoga,
Yeah.
to like go back to the roots, like embrace that it looks different or it looks messy or it looks, one of the words I've really been reclaiming is savage. Uh,
Mhm.
because they called a lot of, my ancestors or people that they didn't know from the land, indigenous people, savage because what are you doing walking barefoot and working with the land? Like that's witchcraft and like embracing that. And it does look different from what's the mainstream look out there. And I think that's come a lot with slowing down, the listening, because when I listen to my body, I get more downloads from my ancestors, and that does look different. That does look not as the same as what you mostly see out there.
Yeah. And I love that you use the word substance because that's exactly what it is. Like,
Mhm.
you know, we're so hungry for depth and devotion and real, you know, exchange that actually has meat in it, not just, you know, fluffy false promises. And this I know that there's a calling for so many women and women who are, you know, I have a facilitator in leadership training, and one of like my pillars is wild devotion, which is feminine leadership, and it's like really getting in touch with your why, your purpose, the depth and the devotion that you are here then to share with others and show up for and be in service to, because that's what we're really seeing is kind of in our industry is like this divide. It's like separating kind of the wheat and the chaff of like those who are really in service to something big, those who really have, you know, collective transformation and collective impact at heart, or those who are just trying to make a quick buck
Mhm.
and charge people insane amounts of money for nothing.
Mhm.
And, you know, it is like this packaging up of the same what people think is what people want. And actually it's like there's so many tools and practices and things that we can learn out there. And there's, you know, we've been influenced so much by the East. And, you know, I'm in the UK and my ancestors are Celtic. I'm got Welsh and Scottish blood in me. So I'm like through and through Celtic, at least a long, long, long way. And so, you know, working seasonally with, you know, the Celtic calendar makes sense for me. And
Mhm.
yet I know that, you know, in sexuality practices, I might work with some tantric practices, some Taoist practices, which obviously come from the East. And there it is about getting, you know, taking the best and leaving the rest. Because I always say, you know, when I teach my students, I'm going to share lots of tools and practices with you. This is not a formula. Like, try, feel, practice, embody, integrate. And if something doesn't land, if something doesn't resonate, don't do it. Don't share it. You don't have to take it as a
Yeah.
practice. And I think there's such a different piece around culture appropriation versus culture appreciation. It's like getting really clear on the why you're using that practice. Are you honoring
Mhm.
where it's come from? Are you really doing it, you know, are you mastering it to for, you know, a greater benefit, or are you just doing it so that you can put something on your sales page and be like, oh yeah, we're gonna work with a yoni egg? And it's like, well, what the fuck is a yoni egg? Like, why are you using the yoni egg? Do you really know where it comes from? And I think, you know, in a way it's a good, it's, but again, that blessing and a curse. It's so, you know, these things are becoming very mainstream and commercialized. Like in a way that's amazing that these ancient practices are arriving in the hands of like the common person. You know, most people couldn't figure out if they got the internet what is a yoni egg and watch a YouTube video. And yet I wonder that in a lot of this kind of everything being so accessible, especially the, you know, plant medicine tourism, let's not even get onto that path, but it's like, you know, what is left to be venerated? Like, where are the true elders, or where are the true wisdom keepers of these practices to turn to? Or is it just ending up in the hands of lots of white women, like in the yoga world, as you're saying, of being like, come to my yoga class, and end up doing all these
Mhm.
crazy poses that no one can ever do in like hot pants.
Yeah, and I think, like, you can feel like if you have that level of discernment, you can tell, and it's not saying all, 'cause I do have mentors that are white, but you can, like, tell their devotion to
Mhm.
practice and the
Yeah.
years that they put into it, and you can tell people who are just doing it, like, as they say, for the gram, you know, just to get the picture, and so I think it is key for women to, like, really, like, tap in, see if that resonates. And also at different points in your life and your spiritual journey, some things may resonate and some things may not at different
Yeah.
times. You know, I actually had a client tell me that I used to trigger her because, you know, I spoke very openly about like my past, you know, talking about like addiction and all that stuff and abuse and she was like, "Yeah," and I realized that was because I just wasn't ready to be so open with like my own truth. And so she's like, and when I had that realization, I was like, "Okay, I have to work with you." And it was just me sharing kind of like my journey. So like also, you may not be for everyone at that time.
Yeah.
You know, I think as long as you do stay true to your own depth, your own substance, you know, you align with the right people. And I think going back into the body really allows us that level of discernment
Yeah.
because our industry has kind of grown in the last few years. Like you know, when I started talking about the woo-woo stuff a decade ago, I was definitely, like, trying to find my people, and it was difficult. And now it's everywhere, which is also good. Like, as we say, it's like a gift and a curse, you know, because. Like, I'm ready finally, I think, to go full circle and start going back into corporate, which is where I used to before, and I'm like, "Corporate is not ready for some of this stuff." And now I'm like, I actually think, you know, corporate is ready because there's a lot of people in it that are ready for, you know, different practices. But yeah, I think it all just goes back to what you said, it's like that embodiment and that discernment.
Yeah. And I get it, you know, when I entered this world, I was
Mm,
so hungry to get my teeth into as much as I could, you know. I'm a 5'1", and so one of that expression in the 5'1" is like, you know, being the forever student, hungry, teaching for, you know, this
mhm,
like this sponge for knowledge. And I love that for so many people, that people just want to learn and learn and learn and learn. But it's like, I think that that's still an imprint of this internalized patriarchy, is like, I need to learn more to prove that I know, versus I need to practice more and feel more. And that letting that be the way that you know that you've mastered something, rather than, oh, I've memorized this so well, now I can teach out of my brain, versus I've done this practice 100 plus times. I know how to guide this practice from my body.
mhm,
And that, I think, is the real difference of somebody, you know, and I've been in that myself of, you know, feeling like I knew some things and then really took them into my body and being like, oh, actually, there's a lot more for me to learn here when I actually take the time to integrate it more. And I think that's the piece that's missing for a lot of it, is this integration. You know, it's, again, we keep coming back to this slowing down. You know, we're
mhm.
so impatient for more, 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 more all the time, expansion, wealth, knowledge, power, all of it.
Yeah.
It's like, how about we just really sit with what we know, trust that we know enough, and just like really sit and master the tools in our toolbox, rather than feeling like we have to go and like
Yeah.
grasp for
Yeah.
more.
And I think that that's also like I see it with the culture, people going on plant medicine, and I can see it also with retreats. Like they get addicted to like so much that happens in it, but they don't integrate it and slow down in the real life that they have to go back and get a hit, of like, I need to do another ayahuasca ceremony to get the insight. I'm like, no, you need to integrate everything that it showed you and not go back. Same thing. I knew someone who was like, I need to do another transformational retreat, which is, yes, amazing. And are you actually integrating or like feeling like you need to escape, like
Yeah.
that escapism again? So it's interesting how a lot of it without that slowness, that integration, people can just find another, I guess, addiction to
Yeah, it
to that.
is.
Yeah. And I love this. I feel like we can keep talking about
I know. I'm like, this is so good.
it is like, very more feminine. I feel like it's in the body versus I feel like the masculine like lives in our mind. And like we need to like take all the all the certifications, the coaching, everything like and actually do it, like practice it. That's the true embodiment because it's not the amount of certifications you have. It's like are you actually like doing the work?
Yeah.
I think that's really, as you mentioned, that's this next stage of where this is going is are you embodying it on a just practicing? Are you living what you're preaching?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. So where can I know we gotta sort of slowly like wrap up here, but where can anyone find you if they want to learn more about you, your events, your retreats, and I get into your
So, yeah, I mean, I would love to invite those who are listening to join me on a retreat. We're going to Greece and Ibiza this year, and my facilitation is happening in Spain. So there's lots of amazing in-person opportunities. You can find that at wildfeminineretreats.com. Otherwise, all my other offerings are on my website, fionamccoss.com, and I'm always on Instagram at Fiona McCoss. So come and say hi. I would really love to, yeah, I would love to know what from this episode has triggered or activated them into something, because as you shared before, I love how people can find us. And again, I've had clients be like, I've unfollowed you, unfollowed you, and unfollowed you, unfollowed you a million times. And it takes them like 3 years to step into my field and say yes, because you and I were truth speakers, and you and I were embodying what
Mhm.
we're preaching, and that can be very activating for some people. So I also thank you for the work that you're doing, and for this podcast, and for speaking so truthfully and candidly, and just for letting your power be felt through your words.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for being a part of the transmission. And one question I always love to ask all of the people I go into this interview, a final question would be in your eyes and your definition, what does it mean to live a thriver lifestyle? Sisters, are you ready to reclaim your wild, sacred, feminine power? Join us for Savage Feminine Reclamation, an intimate, luxurious, and transformative retreat happening September 22 to 27, 2025 in Tulum, Mexico. This isn't just a retreat. It's a sacred 5-day journey into the heart of your divine feminine essence. Through powerful embodiment practices, rituals, and deep connections with nature, you'll shed old layers, awaken your inner goddess, and step into your fullest power, while also enjoying time to explore Tulum's famous cenotes and white sand beaches. Space is extremely limited to ensure a deeply personalized and transformative experience. Don't wait, there's only 10 spots available. Secure your spot now and give yourself the reclamation your soul has been craving. Visit thriverlifestyle.com to learn more and reserve your place today. This is your time. Answer your soul's call to reclaim your savage feminine power.
I think it goes back to what we were talking about before, and being just finding joy and contentment and the feeling of abundance in the simple, mundane, day-to-day life. Because to me, I truly feel like I've reached the place where I'm thriving and not surviving. And my life is not very exciting day to day. It's not the fancy things. It's not, it's like we live on a farm. I have a dog. often it just looks like I'm wearing welly boots and a big puffer jacket, and to me, but knowing that I have a loving partner and a fucking cute dog and food on my table and cuddles available to me, I'm like, I'm fucking thriving. Like, I am doing well. And like, my business thriving is a bonus and I love my work, but it's like, I think finding just true contentment and holding in other aspects to your work and business just is like, oh, that just feels like I'm doing well. I'm thriving.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Beautiful. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. And thank you, everyone, for listening. Please share this with anyone you feel will resonate with this message. And see you next time. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening or watching the Thriver Lifestyle Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to stay inspired with new conversations each week. Your support means the world. Please share this episode with your community, whether it's your team at work or closest friends. Together, we can spread the message of embodied leadership, holistic wellness, and thriving as a collective. Follow me on social media for more insights and behind-the-scenes content. And if something resonated with you today, please leave a podcast review. It helps us get our message to even more people all around the world. Until next time, remember, you are powerful, you are divine, and you are meant to thrive. See you in the next episode.